Hi, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Entertainment, the Panasonic podcast. I'm here with Debra Santos today. Debra, president of IAWA.
Yeah, president of International Aviation's Women Association.
Great. Thank you for joining us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and IAWA? What is it?
Well, first, I have to thank you. I really want to thank the Panasonic team for asking me to come here. I did a little research about your company, and you guys are spot on. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about women, in aerospace and women in our industry. But I think, when I look at Panasonic, I'm pretty impressed. It gets down to culture. So my culture, what's my deal, right? Okay, woman engineer turned marketeer, worked for Boeing, or a major airplane company, for 36 years. I can tell you I had a lot of firsts. When I started at the Boeing company in engineering, I was the first woman in a sea of desks.
Wow.
When I was a Naval Reserve officer, I was the token female in that unit, an aeronautical engineering duty officer. So my career has expanded, a really exciting journey. I've really enjoyed working in the aviation industry and aerospace. And I think when you become passionate about what you do, it doesn't feel like you're going to work. And I've had a really interesting journey. And I got lots of stories to tell, but we probably don't have enough time to go through some of those.
We always have time. We always have time for you. So let's talk about women in aerospace. I mean, traditionally a male-dominated industry. We're starting to see some change there, but there's been some fabulous people over the years. Can you talk about maybe some of the real great role models that we can look at?
Well, when you look at it, actually, we've made a lot of progress. And I think, it starts, in the 1980s when I joined the company, there wasn't a lot of women. But over the years, we've made significant progress. And there's Chris Brown, who was a CEO of EasyJet. When I worked with her, when she was with TUI, I had an all-sales team, all-female team. So it was kind of interesting to work in that kind of an environment. We have Stephanie Pope, that's now CEO of the Boeing company.
Lovely lady.
Yes, lovely. And I can go over and over. I mean, I was reading this one article and, the other day, and it's amazing how much progress we've made. There was a list this long of women and women and women. And you know what? One of the things we like to do is, women in airlines, how many CEOs were there? Well, a few years ago it was 5, now it's 10 to 12%. But I think that's a narrow focus. I think we really have to step back and look at not just aviation, but aerospace, as well as all the different companies. I mean, the industry has changed. I mean, you look, you have drones, you have AI, you have artificial intelligence. All of this is very exciting and fascinating, and it all belongs into the aerospace aviation industry.
Especially with the advent of, the digital airplane, with digital aviation coming in, with that widening of passenger experience has opened up the industry to the whole tech world.
And you guys know that very well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what can we as companies do more here? I mean, we can do more in the industry to help, to encourage women to come into the business. What more is there?
So let's look back at, I think it's cultural. I think a big thing of it's cultural. I think, it's being deliberate in some of your own practices. But I think sometimes we've been evolving. Women have been in the industry for a number of years. One of the first women sales directors for commercial started in 1969. People probably don't know her name. We're not necessarily out there all the time. But I think we've had an evolution of women becoming more involved, and I think it can be almost a revolution. And there's cultural changes that need to take place. And this may be an unpopular statement, but we really need to get rid of the Jack Welchism in our society, because that is some of that culture that made it really uncomfortable.
It feels a bit old school.
Old school.
It's a bit bullying.
Bullying. You know what? When you are looking at constantly measuring shareholder value and you're not looking at your people, that is an asset, then these aren't companies that I think will survive long term.
You talked about sales. I remember some of the Boeing sales leaders, and especially some of the lady Boeing sales leaders being absolutely fabulous in that Asia Pacific area. I mean, do you think that there's a different level of approach, of agreeableness that some of the women leaders can bring into the industry, which is a fresh approach and away from that Jack Welch mindset?
Well, I think it's already happened, and I think that's where you're getting a lot of the pushback. I mean, when you look at what other companies are doing now, and you look at how innovative they are and how they spearhead their culture versus the old style. I mean, there's changes that need to be made at a lot of these different companies, and I think over time you're going to see it. And the new companies coming on board. Definitely.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing it with some of the airlines as well. I'm thinking El Al in particular. We're seeing a new approach coming from, some of the new leadership coming in there. It really does feel like culture as well.
Yeah, it is culture. It is culture. And, it's funny because, one of the things that you put a woman into anything and, they can succeed. I mean, I can't tell you how many different cultures I worked with in my career. All over. And it's just like, maybe sometimes we're more adaptable. Maybe sometimes, you're smart, your business, and you go in and you try to figure it out.
So tell me about IAWA. This is a body that's specifically there to help.
Yeah, IAWA has been around for 38 years. And it's one of the older women organizations. And their whole focus is really to develop women and leaders. And we do that, we have a number of different programs. We have a scholarship program with, I think, 6 universities worldwide in all different areas. So we're promoting STEM as well, STEM and STEAM, because it is not just women and engineers, but it's lawyers, it's creativity. You want the whole package, in people, all of our capabilities. So we promote STEAM and STEM in the workplace, in the school systems. We have a scholarship program that we're heavily engaged in at the master's level as well as undergrad. Then we support those students, college students coming out. And then we also have a mentoring program where we set up mentors. And so you have a network of women in leadership. We're about 550, 600 members.
Wow.
So we're not huge, and we would never be huge because that's not necessarily going to reflect leadership management style. And there's just, it's a really wonderful organization. And I can tell you stories about how we have helped women. Maybe they graduated from school, we helped them get a job. An IAWA person might have put their resume into a company.
Like a sponsor almost.
Yeah, a little bit of a sponsor. And then, there's a story once where then the pandemic hit, the person didn't have a citizenship, so they couldn't go to the defense site. So, a couple of us picked up the phone and made some calls and got the person at FedEx. And then a couple of years later, they're coming back wanting to be more in engineering. And so we've watched and we provide guidance for some of these women.
Oh, that's fantastic. So if you're a lady and you're wanting to get hold of IAWA, how do you go about it? What are the resources available?
I mean, we have a number of activities going on. We talk about connect, inspire, and lead. So a connect event is maybe just a local community where there's a bunch of women who's in aerospace and aviation get together. Then we have forums, which is a one-day event that we have more speaking. And then we have, of course, our annual conference. And one of the things is you can look at our website or go meet some of the people at one of these events. Or participate in one of our webinars. We've really, the positive from the pandemic is that we've really got an opportunity now to really have some online interesting webinar activity where we really do bring in key speakers to discuss either their industry and their areas of interest, or maybe coaching, how to get through some things. So it's all about networking, and it's all about sharing experiences at a management leadership level.
What's the web address?
www.iawa.org.
So, Deborah, this sounds fantastic. How do we as an industry incorporate, these initiatives, STEM, STEAM, and bring it into our culture? How do we leverage that diversity?
Well, first of all, it has to be a system approach, right? It can't be just a one-off. So maybe stepping back and looking at, your own culture. I mean, maybe, we talk about what can you do to bring something in. First of all, why don't you look at and measure yourself? How are you doing when it comes to diversity and bringing women into the organization? Have you talked to your people? Have you gone into any in-depth analysis or asking people where they feel they're at? I mean, when I look at Panasonic, it looks like you've got a really good retention rating. People like to work here. So, I don't know, 25% of your women, 25% of your executives are women. You've made progress in comparison to a lot of other companies. And I actually would like to thank you for sponsoring IAWA, because I know you've helped us in that area too. There's no one answer. There's so many. The other day I was talking to a woman who's got a PhD in the studies of looking at diversity in the flight deck. There are so many of these studies going around. There is not one single answer. I think sometimes companies need to just step back and reflect on what they are doing. And they're all about, creating and hiring the most capable people. And the fact that we still have to be talking about this is sad sometimes.
It does feel like there's a long way to go. We're seeing some of those steps, at the moment. But I agree, there's more that can be done. But it's great to see we do have some great role models. We talked about Stephanie. We talked about, a dozen or so CEOs of airlines today. But as you say, there's an entire value stream of suppliers and adjacent industries.
2 or 3 hours talking about different women in the aviation aerospace industry, whether they're in airlines, whether they're in, we're all over. And I think you really got to look at, if you're if someone, it's your problem, it's our problem, right? It's something that we have to be aware of. So, if some of the issue I think some people find is well, it's really not our problem. It's really not. When it's a male, it's, oh, well, if I'm not a manager, if I'm not this, I'm not that, it's really not my problem. But it is. It's not your problem. It's just what you got to do. You got to make sure that, you are looking at opportunities for women to develop. You got to find, push. Sometimes you just need to push them a little bit. I mean, when I look back on my experiences, some of the men knew I could do it. I wasn't too sure I could. And, they'd shove me out there and I'm thinking, I'm going to fail. And you know what? You just hang on tight and you keep on pursuing and going. You
certainly succeeded.
I did. I think, but I did with the help of a lot of different people. And, it's just reaching out,
I find some of the challenge is there's giving help, but also being willing to accept help as well. And that's always a challenge for everyone.
It is hard. It is hard. And some of us,
we have egos.
Yeah, it's not so much ego. I think sometimes it's sometimes fear that if you have to ask for help, maybe you don't have the capability. And that's tough.
Yeah.
To have that straightforward conversation. And I think there's a generational activity now going on. I think, I look at some of the younger women coming in so confident, so knowledgeable, but you also think, oh yeah, I wonder how much of that is pushing that, sense of, I got to show them.
Have you seen that as a common trait that needs to happen, or is it more wide than that?
It's a challenging question because I then I have to start thinking of different cultures because it's a little bit more complex. And one of the things too is I think, coaching women and talking to other women is, one of the things I used to do is watch other leaders. What is it that they had that I really liked? Why did I like to go work for them?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I actually talk about when I talk to some of the other women or if I'm coaching stuff is make sure you're a good listener, because that can be so important, that you're engaged, that you have contact, that you're really involved in the discussion. Because so many times people don't take the time because if you're not listening, you're not hearing. You're hearing, but are you truly listening to all the
engaging?
Elements.
Yeah. What events does IAWA have coming up?
We have a number of events coming up. We have activity in Montreal, I think on the 28th of August. The biggest event coming up, of course, is our annual conference, which will be in Dublin. Was it November 5th?
Mm-hmm.
Starting November 5th. And then throughout the year, we hold, we might have a connect event. There's a lot of women that'll get together in Washington, D.C. We're having a Seattle event, actually, I think in September. So a lot of the women that are in Seattle will be getting together to meet. And we had a huge network talk. Yeah. And again, when we have a connect event, it's really people to get together and share ideas and connect and meet. When we have a forum, that's usually, there's presentations around that. We'll have hosts. And then we have of course, the annual conference. Also coming up, we have a couple of really interesting webinars where IAWA's been spending some time hiring a few people to come in, coaching opportunities. And we've got some exciting things going on in IAWA too. Like I said, we're 38 years old. And we've got a great board of directors, and we really do believe that our job is to serve our members. And so we've been listening, and we've got some fantastic new programs that we're going to roll out come November. So lots more ways to get involved and say, well, why IAWA? The more involvement you get, we have committees, we have communities. We're really doing a refresh.
You must have seen people who've come in at a low engagement level and now are at a very high engagement level and have become mentors of themselves.
Yeah. I mean, and it's natural. Our lives get busy. And so sometimes you're really involved with IAWA, but depending on your job, and it ebbs and flows. But there's some women, I mean, honestly, one of our founding members still is involved in IAWA.
Oh, fantastic.
And you see a lot of it. A lot of the people that I know that have been involved, been around for 20 years. And even when they retire, they're still involved with IAWA. You know why? Because they can reach out and help some of those other women. So
what are the ways that women can get engaged in IAWA? What are the different options?
Well, we have a number of different options. And I think the more involvement you get, you can pick something that you really enjoy. If you are really interested in the scholarship and helping women, we've got a community there that you can do work under called Next Generation. If you're interested in, helping us plan our conference, I mean, that's pretty exciting. And then you contact people and you're actually, pulling all the different ideas and for the conference in itself and the themes and all that activity. We also have membership, where we're constantly looking at our membership and how do we want to evolve that. There's a committee there. And then there's fundraising where, you can always get involved. Now, the other area that we're working on, so those are the committees. Now we're moving over to actually creating what we call communities. And that's like a community of sustainability, a community of artificial intelligence, a community of business aviation and general aviation. And so these are some of the concepts that we're looking. So you can reach out and have like-minded people, or maybe you want to go learn more about some of those areas, and that's not your forte. So we're really making some changes in how we help IAWA members become more involved.
These communities sound fantastic. So these are on current themes, AI, sustainability, etc. I love this. Not
yet, but we're rolling out. We'll be rolling that out pretty soon. I think we had it generally, but it was we had MRNO, finance and insurance, and now we're moving into actually, I think, more robust topics. Yes.
Some of the difficult topics that are impacting our industry as well. So it's great that there's a leadership approach there.
Yes.
Can you talk a bit more about the mentor and mentoring program? Because I think we have people in the industry at both ends of the scale who would like to help and be helped.
Yeah, this is an area where we probably can actually help companies because our mentoring program isn't within a company. Our mentoring program is we match, women with other women. And they're not in the same company. They may not even be in the same area of specialty. They may not be, the person that I mentored was, of course, an engineer, but I could also be mentoring someone that's a lawyer. I mean, when you look at the background that IAWA has, we've got lawyers, insurance, engineers. And so we're constantly looking at how we actually match. And we have a program that helps us, but then we fine tune it. So it's never, we have a program, but then we also step back and put the human touch to it. So we really are looking at how we best put those folks together.
I think that adds almost an extra element there because it's not just maybe people in your company. There's very big companies in aerospace, but if you can go and poll someone in a different company or a different level in the industry, you can bring in extra adjacencies and synergies that your colleagues will not be aware of, especially with some of these other fields, sustainability, AI. I mean, there's so much complexity out there. I think that will really help.
Yeah, well, we're a learning organization. I mean, I think one of the reasons why a lot of women enjoy our conferences and forums and connect is just because of the robust dialogue and discussion we have on so many different topics, and all based on aerospace, aviation. It brings us together. But what I would worry about in business development is, of course, much different than a lawyer who works for an insurance company. But to hear their stories is pretty darn fascinating, especially if you're in the business development side. So cautionary.
I love that tagline, a learning organization. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, Debra, thank you so much. We look forward to the next 38 years of IAWA. Really looking forward to see what comes out of the Dublin general meeting. We think it's a fantastic organization. We've certainly benefited from it in our business. I think our industry has got more it can do, and we look forward to seeing how it can do with yourself as a leader. So thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode of Beyond Entertainment. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next episode.